Recording in progress. Hello, teacher.
All right, great guys. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Very good to have this time with you. Great. So as I told you yesterday, my plan for tonight's class is to practice the listening section, and we're going to do so for the entire class. Okay, so please prepare your headphones and let's start with that. Let's get started. Okay, here we have, this is very important. Okay, here as well. Good. So we're going to practice as the listening section is going to be. We're going to practice lectures and also conversations, both of the materials, okay? Both types of materials you're going to find in this section. Great, here we are. Let's start with a conversation. Let us go with something very soft to begin with our journey, okay? So here we go. First conversation to all of you guys. Well, so listen to this one, take your notes, and as you know them, you're going to respond one by one to the questions for this lecture, for this conversation. Let's go.
Listen to a conversation between a student and her professor.
Colleen, thanks for coming to see me about your paper. So, the assignment was to compare and contrast any two specific characters. I mean, any two specific archetypes that appeared in the folklore and myths you were assigned this semester.
Right. An archetype is basically just a synonym for character, right?
Well, not exactly. I mean, folklorists use the term archetype to describe certain kinds of characters, but not just any kind. Archetypes are universalizing stereotypical personalities that are commonly found across multiple stories and even multiple civilizations at a time.
Right. I see.
But let's get to the point. What I wanted to say was, the paper you emailed me was a bit problematic, and I think you should redo it.
Really? I was actually really proud of it.
Your thesis that folklore and mythology collections, that anthologies of fairy tales like the one I assigned on the syllabus should be revised for children so that stories will include more powerful female characters. Well, it was an interesting thesis, I'll give you that, but it won't cut it for this assignment.
Well, the way I see it, we have hundreds of versions of these folk tales. But which ones have survived? All the traditional stories in most anthologies depict the girls as passive at best and stupid at worst.
Okay, I understand, but...
Hear me out. Young women today are looking for role models. We need stories with heroines who validate our dreams, our aspirations. That's really the heart of what I was getting at in the paper. I think it's more important to focus on untraditional heroines.
Well said. The issue isn't that I disagree with you, Colleen. Actually, you made some really insightful points in the paper. The problem is, well, you totally neglected the assignment.
Didn't I compare Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid with the Grimm brothers' Snow White?
Not exactly. Your paper asserted that their core similarity was that they embodied old-fashioned characteristics and that the stories about them shouldn't have been included in the anthology or others like it in the first place.
You saw where I was coming from, right? Like, my grandmother used to read me Irish folktales, and the heroines showed courage through their intelligence and quick-wittedness. Why can't films and anthologies focus on stories like that?
You have a point, but you were supposed to compare the two characters in meaningful ways, showing specific similarities and differences between archetypes. The bulk of your paper wasn't about archetypes at all.
But I talked about similarities between common depictions of traditional characters, right?
Look, I would have been open to an approach in which you highlighted common characteristics like passivity and self-sacrifice and showed why these kinds of values can convey potentially bad messages for girls. But even in that situation, the core of the paper, the meat of the essay would still have to be about the texts themselves.
Okay.
Still, I'm letting you redo the paper instead of grading it now, because I appreciate the point that you were trying to make. Does that seem fair?
Yes, definitely. But I'm still not entirely sure how to revise this.
Review the two texts and in the paper, show where the characters are similar and different from one another using specific examples and quotes. If you want to discuss how their specific features are harmful to feminism, be my guest, but be sure to keep it in the context relevant to the assignment. I'm sure you'll bring a fascinating perspective to the table.
Great. So here we go with the questions, okay? In this case, Elsa, you're going to help me with the first one, okay? So this is for you. Here you have your 45 seconds and you can start responding.
The last one.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, this is for you, dear Claudia, this question. You can start.
B.
All right, thank you very much, Claudia. Let's go to the third question. This is for you once again, dear Elsa.
A.
Okay, very good. Just on time. Okay, this is for you, Claudia.
D. The last one.
Okay, thank you very much. And the final question for Elsa. And by the way, this is the type of question that we have to listen to. Okay, so let's listen to a fragment of the conversation.
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
The issue isn't that I disagree with you, Colleen. Actually, you made some really insightful points in the paper. The problem is, well, you totally neglected the assignment.
Why does the professor say this?
The issue isn't that I disagree with you, Colleen.
Okay, so now you can respond.
A.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's check out your answers and let's find out if you got them correctly. Okay, let's go. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Great. So here we are. So the first question was, why does the student visit the professor to discuss a problem with her paper's topical focus? I think this was very easy, right, to understand because the professor says that. Well, right at the beginning, she had written a beautiful paper. Nonetheless, not following the outlines the professor had assigned for that paper, right? So I think it's very easy, this one. Let's go with the next question. It says here, according to the professor, what is an archetype? And here the correct answer was C, a type of very commonly repeated character across multiple retellings, okay? Yeah, and I think that this was stated by the professor when he said, right, you have to write about archetypes, that is to say, characters that are similar in different stories, right? And that was, let's say, the topic of the entire discussion, that she had forgotten to compare these two archetypes, that is to say, characters that are very much similar across multiple retellings, right? And here, a universalizing story able to be understood by many cultures, although it seems, tempting because it uses some vocabulary that could say, this was something discussed in our conversation. When you actually think about it, an archetype, as the professor discussed it, is a character that, because it was very similar in different stories and retellings, she had to compare them, right? And that was the outline, let's say, for the assignment, right? But anyways, no more. It's very good. It's very good. Let's say that this is also, of course, the other response that would definitely be right if it weren't for this one, right? So you're about to get it. Don't worry. Let's go for the next question. What is the female student's attitude toward the Irish folk tales she heard from her grandmother? And this case is that they feature female characters who could serve as positive role models. And I think that this was clear when she said, right, my grandma told me stories of female characters that were important and were significant for the story, and that could serve nowadays or contemporarily for inspiring new women, right? So that's more or less, let's say, the justification for this response. They feature female characters who could serve as positive role models. A, they included the things that were probably harmful to feminism. Well, I mean, harmful not, right? Because if you read or if you listen carefully, what she said was that the fact that she discussed these stories, this Irish folk tales in her paper, was because she considered that should be something nowadays appreciated by literary professors or literature professors, because, well, apparently she considers that most of these archetypes are male-oriented. That is to say, they are somehow part of the patriarchy, or I don't know. But anyways, it was a very good response. Okay, don't worry. Next, we have the fourth question. What will the student probably do next? And this was a very good response. She will rewrite the paper, following directions more assiduously, right? Because this is what the professor said. Come on, please, I'm gonna give you time to rewrite this, and I'm gonna evaluate it now, and I'm going to punctuate this. Take your time, follow the outlines, and I'll review it, because I liked your paper and the insightful points you made, right? So I think it was very clear anyways. And the last question also was correctly chosen. Why does the professor say this? And let us remember what was.
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
The issue isn't that I disagree with you, Colleen.
Yeah, and this is, let's say, a paradigm, right, of what I told you when we were discussing this together. And I told you sometimes phrases try to redirect a conversation, right? You have the conversation in this point, but you want to move it towards point B. So you take a transition phrase and you say, Karen, it's not that I disagree with you, because apparently there was a confusion in which she was considering the professor disagree with her thesis, but it wasn't the problem. The problem was that she didn't follow the outlines he had assigned. So he uses that sentence to transition them from that point towards the last one, right? So yeah, he wants to refocus or redirect their conversation or discussion. Okay, very good. Let's go with a lecture now. Okay, let's go with a lecture. Okay, so listen to this one. You know that these are longer and a little bit more complex. So please pay attention and let's go with this lecture on biology.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
All organisms need energy, right? All living things have to consume energy-dense biological materials, otherwise known as foods, in order to function, grow, and maintain healthy cells. The food that is ingested by the organism has to be digested in order to be absorbed and effectively used for whatever bodily process is needed. So let's compare digestion in humans and something pretty far removed. Single-celled organisms called protozoa. Both protozoa and humans ingest substantial amounts of food material and break it down in 3 parts of digestion. I mean, they share the same basic phases. The 3 parts of digestion are mechanical, chemical, and absorption. First, let's take a look at the 3 different parts of digestion that are common to both protozoa and humans. For many organisms, mechanical digestion involves the breakdown of large food particles into smaller and more manageable sizes. These food particles keep their original molecular composition, their original chemical makeup, when they're broken down into smaller particles. That's important because at this early stage there's only minimal nourishment to be drawn from most foods, but the smaller physical size assists enzymes, which are these chemicals that break down food. The smaller size of whatever's being ingested helps the enzymes to gain better access to specific molecules in the food. Smaller pieces means more surface area, so material can be broken down more quickly. That's the chemical digestion process, the work of enzymes. Once the food material is broken down into its core components, the building blocks of sustenance, smaller nutrients can be absorbed in humans by cells that line the gut. We'll come back to that in a moment. Finally, the absorption stage of digestion occurs when these nutrients are taken up and directed to different parts of the organism, along with minerals and vitamins that are connected to essential enzymatic activity. So how do protozoa and humans apply these 3 stages of digestion differently? That may seem like a silly question because clearly single-celled creatures don't have digestive tracts. Instead, protozoa create an internal vacuole to ingest and digest food. You can picture the vacuole as a kind of bubble within the cell, or maybe a subunit. It's even bound by a cell membrane that protects the vacuole like a skin. In the case of an amoeba, one type of protozoa, temporary cell projections extend and contract, engulfing the food particles into food vacuoles. That's the mechanical stage of the process. Digestive enzymes are then sent in, that is, they're released into the food vacuole as part of chemical digestion. This helps to break down the contents of the vacuole into those simpler molecules, which then go through the absorption stage and enter the protozoa's main cell structure. If the food particle that is ingested carries anything unusable or unnecessary, it's expelled from the vacuole. Let me give you another example. So, there's this protozoa, a single-celled organism called Paramecia that sweeps up microscopic food like a vacuum cleaner. It sucks the food up into oral grooves and the lower end of the gullet, where a food vacuole is created. This is the mechanical phase. The food vacuole eventually travels, the whole vacuole moves toward the anterior end of the cell, away from the front of the Paramecia. Chemical breakdown of the food begins, and the essential nutrients are absorbed. Just like before, any waste is expelled. The human digestive system, on the other hand, is made up of a sort of canal for the food to move through the body. It consists of the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and rectum. And There are a number of glands lining that canal, including the wall of the stomach, intestines, pancreas, and liver. It's not as simple as sweeping up food. Mechanical digestion for humans involves crushing and liquefying food. That's chewing for the most part, but also contractions of the stomach and small intestine. But believe it or not, chemical digestion actually begins in the mouth. Our spit, saliva. It helps to liquefy and lubricate the food, breaking down complex starches before the food is moved through the rest of the canal. Of course, in the stomach, acid and enzymes break down the food even more. The acidity levels in the stomach help to destroy any ingested microorganisms and support enzymatic activity. All of this is basically just a more complex form of the same three stages we saw in those single-celled organisms.
Great, there we are. Very good. So let's start in with the questions, all right? Let's go with you, dear Elsa. This is going to be yours, and you can start responding now.
Sí.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go then to the next question. Claudia, this is yours.
A.
All right, thank you. Next question for you, Elsa.
Sí.
D or C?
Sí.
Okay. This one, right? A subunit within a cell that utilizes, no, or B, you mean? Yes, B, this one?
Sí. No. Sí.
Oh,
Three.
this one. Oh, three, I'm sorry. It's just my math. I cannot listen very well. Don't worry. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, let's go with you, Claudia.
A.
Okay, let's go. Okay, let's listen to this question, Elsa.
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
All living things have to consume energy-dense biological materials, otherwise known as foods.
Why does the professor say this?
Otherwise known as foods.
Okay, you can go.
And D.
Okay, this one, right? B?
D.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, this one. Very good. And now let's go with Claudia. Okay, this is for you, Claudia.
B.
Okay. Notice this one. Which one else? Choose two answers.
D.
D. All right. Very good. Okay. Nice. So let's go and review them, your responses. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. So let's review this. So it says here, what is the main topic of the lecture? And here we had different forms of the three general stages of the digestive process. Well, yeah, this is the correct answer. You know what? Because at the beginning, right, the professor says there are three different stages that are repeated in the digestive process of different creatures or organisms, right? He goes to describe, first of all, unicellular organisms as protozoes and stuff like that, and then to more complex organisms as human beings, right? So yeah, it's like right at the beginning, the professor said that, and let's say that give us the hint that the main topic is different forms of the three general stages of the digestive process, okay? So why larger organisms require more complex digestive processes than protozoa? Yeah, I mean, this is factual because, of course, we know that larger organisms indeed require more complex digestive processes, but as such, it wasn't mentioned, right, in the lecture. So that's the reason why we cannot say this is a correct answer. But don't worry, it's very good anyways. It's a matter of paying attention to some sentences, and then you get it, as we have seen, right? Well, let's go. Next question. According to the professor, which of the following is true of the mechanical digestion? It does not alter the chemical composition of foods that are ingested, right? This is a detailed question. How to respond? Well, you respond by paying attention to the details, and you did in this case. The professor said this, right? Very much emphatically that mechanical digestion doesn't alter the chemical composition of food, right? Very good. Next question, number 3. According to the professor, what is a vacuole? And in this case, it's a subunit within a cell that utilizes digestive enzymes, right? And I remember pretty well when he said this, when he showed the picture, right? Of very little bubble or circle within the cell. And he said it's a subunit, right? So with that word, it's a subunit within a cell that utilizes enzymes, right? So yeah, a bubble of enzymes that is released to break down food particles. Maybe, of course, this one is tricky because in this case, the third answer also utilizes more or less the same words, right? But notice that here, the breaking point is that it says to break down food particles, but that is not the use of bubble. Is the bubble where the enzymes are within, and the enzymes are the ones that break down food particles, not the bubble, because in this question, and this response, sorry, it says that the bubble is released to break down food particles, but it's not the case. It says that the enzymes are present within the bubble, and within the bubble, they break down food particles in this mechanical digestion, not that the bubble does it. So maybe that's the confusion there. Notice that these are very tricky responses because they are trying to confuse you, right? By using ideas that are present indeed in the lecture, but they link them incorrectly. So you have to be very careful in this type of questions, okay? In detailed questions, because these are basically detailed questions. What did the passage say about quote? Detailed questions, no more than that. Okay, how does the professor organize the information on digestive systems? It was very good. From an overview on common elements of digestion between protozoa and humans to detailed descriptions and the difference between them. Well, you got this very well. I think there's no need to explain. And in this one, what does the professor say this? Let's listen once again.
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
All living things have to consume energy-dense biological materials, otherwise known as foods.
Why does the professor say this?
Otherwise known as foods.
Okay. I admit that this fourth answer, to simplify a concept that may have otherwise been too difficult to grasp, is very much tempting, and I would have chosen it if it wasn't because the professor laughed. You notice that he laughed? So the thing that he laughed, and I told you this, there are two things that tell you let's say the opinion of a person on something, and tell you more or less why is he doing something, and those are the intonation and the word choice. So the thing that he is laughing and making fun of this statement tells you that this was some sort of comic attempt or some sort of comic endeavor. He was trying to say, hey, this is comical, you know, that this scientific wording is very, very much scientific and it sounds very much complex. But if you think about it, it's just food, right? So yeah, to highlight the comically scientific wording. So notice that little detail, the fact that he laughed at his own statement tells you and so communicates to you that he's trying to remark a comical thing, right? That he found on this statement, okay? Question 6. According to the lecture, which of the following describes the digestion in both humans and protozoa? And here we have nourishment, right? This one you got it correctly. Is ingested and separated into its various components. Yes, very good. We listen about this. And enzymes draw nutrients from food material during chemical digestion. Okay, well, we also listen to this. That is the work of enzymes to, let's say, absorb nutritious elements from this material, food, during this chemical digestion, right? So yeah, it's just like this is the correct answer. And this one, a path in the organism's body. Well, this is not true because the professor said, right, in unicellular organisms, as protozoals, for example, they don't have a track, right? Or something, or a path that pushes this food throughout it. And thus, of course, this process occurs during that time. Instead of that, this very much minute organisms as protozoals have this other type of mechanism that is this wall, right? We described, I think that was the term, this little subunit, this bubble that fulfills that role instead of having some sort of path like our intestines, excuse me, that do so for us, right? Anyways, good. Let's go with another lecture.
Teacher,
Okay. Yes, tell me, Claudia.
what happens if I have like that question and I do one right and one wrong? How is the punctuation?
Okay, thank you very much. Good question. Yeah, in this case, the punctuation for this type of question, for example, because here they give you, well, the order to choose two answers. This type of question is normally worth 2 points. That is to say, if you choose both responses, they are going to give you 2 points, right? Whereas when you merely choose one, of course, they are going to give you half of that score, 1 point, right? Or if, for example, instead of choosing 2 answers, you have to choose 3, but you merely get 1, they're going to give you half of a point. And at the end, they make some sort of final calculation and they round the numbers if it is necessary. For example, if you got, I don't know, 18.5, they give you 19, right? Of course, because that's half a point. But yeah, in this case, in this particular case, because we have 2 answers and this type of question is normally worth 2 points, you'd get 1 point because you just got 1 and the other one, of course, was incorrect, right? But that is more or less how it works. Is that fine?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Great, so let's go with one more lecture for our practice tonight. Here we are. Okay, next. Very good. So let's listen to this astronomy class. Very interesting one. Okay, let's go.
Listen to part of a lecture in an astronomy class.
Next, I want to talk about a topic that all of us here on Earth have probably thought about in some way at some time or another. That would be the likelihood of life on other planets. Scientists refer to a planet's ability to develop and sustain life as planet habitability. Planet habitability can be calculated using basic data that we believe to be accurate about far-off planets. They are the same factors that make Earth habitable to us humans. They combine to create a perfect storm, if you will, for conditions that are essential in fostering life. But not only must several of these conditions be met, they must be just right. First, a planet needs to be terrestrial. This means it's made of rock and metal, and is not a gas planet like Jupiter is in our solar system. Gaseous planets are too low in mass with too little gravity to hold an atmosphere, the protective shield that insulates a planet. For example, Earth's atmosphere is roughly 170 kilometers thick, keeping the surface of the planet nice and warm, and also protected from the sun's radiation. But a planet like Venus, our next-door neighbor, has an atmosphere 100 times thicker than Earth's, made of greenhouse gases. So Venus is way too hot and toxic to be habitable. Terrestrial planets also have volcanoes and geologic activity, unlike gaseous planets, which can circulate nutrients to organisms. Since all terrestrial planets have the same basic chemical makeup, we know nutrients are present. Nutrients are essential for planet habitability because they build and maintain the bodies of all living things. Speaking of nutrients and their circulation, a habitable planet also requires liquid water and a water cycle. Actually, the presence of liquid water is the most important factor in determining planet habitability. A planet too close to its sun or too far away is not capable of supporting liquid water, and it's immediately disqualified from supporting life. Liquid water is a solvent essential in biochemical reactions. It transports chemicals inside an organism's cells and throughout the body. Without liquid water, an organism's cells won't receive or be able to dissolve the chemicals that they need for energy and growth. A planet might still be considered habitable even if it's in the midst of a long drought, which can cause life to become latent, that is, inactive. But for activity to start back up sooner or later, water has to become available again. The energy able to be harnessed from lighter chemical sources is a large factor in planet habitability. Earth is placed in its solar system with a steady influx of sunlight, but not too much or too little, like the case with planets too close or too far from the sun. Just like nutrients, lighter chemical energy gives organism cells the ability to run their processes. For example, iron and sulfur are two chemicals that are essential in providing energy to cells. Remember that light energy can be too great. Think of harmful rays such as ultraviolet. On the other hand, iron and sulfur and other energy-providing chemicals, having too many chemicals like that on a planet is never a problem. Now, a planet's temperature also has to be in a certain range in order to sustain life. Temperature will affect the speed of the movement of atoms and molecules. If it's too cold, chemical activity is slow and it's basically ineffective. But too much heat, well, that causes genetic material to disintegrate. Keep in mind the importance of liquid water. Water cannot be frozen or evaporate, as will happen on a planet that's too cold or too hot. Earth is the only planet in our solar system with a temperature range capable of sustaining life, though the interior of some of the terrestrial planets and moons could possibly be in this range. Mars shows signs of once supporting liquid water, and it even has ice at its polar caps. Still, it lacks the definitive factors that make a planet habitable. As you can probably see, determining planet habitability is a tricky process. We have to consider carefully the precise features of a planet. And even then, all this assumes that organisms on other planets are carbon-based, like we are. Earth does offer an impressive example of what's possible when such fine circumstances are met. All of these hypotheses surrounding planet habitability are built around what we know about Earth. Of course, it's always possible for unknown organisms to be utterly uncharacteristic, living in a scenario of habitability that's completely dissimilar to our own, one that we would consider incapable of supporting life.
Great, there we are. Let's go to the questions then. Dear Elsa, you go with this one. Don't start. Okay. Did your house in trouble? Okay.
Me.
Yes, dear Elsa.
B.
B. Okay. Very good. All right. Let's go with the next one. Yeah, I saw your message, dear Claudia. Don't worry. It's fine if you have not managed to listen very well. So respond with all the data and knowledge you have managed to grasp. Okay. Don't worry. Let's go.
C.
Okay. C. All right. And which one else?
B.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. Elsa, this is yours.
C.
Okay. Question number 4. This goes for Claudia.
A.
Which one? Excuse me, dear Claudia.
A.
A. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Question number 5. This is for you, dear Elsa.
The last one.
Okay. Thank you very much. And the last question is for you, dear Claudia. We have to listen to an audio first. Let's listen.
Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
They are the same factors that make Earth habitable to us humans. They combine to create a perfect storm, if you will, for conditions that are essential in fostering life.
What does the professor imply when he says this?
They combine to create a perfect storm, if you will, for conditions that are essential in fostering life.
Okay. Now you can respond.
D. The last one.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. That's it, guys. Those are all the questions for this one. Very good. So let's go now and check them out in order to see if you got them correctly. Okay, let's come back. Okay. Great, so let's start. It says, what is the lecture mainly about? In this case, is what likely makes a planet able to sustain life. Yeah, and this is a great answer, right? Because at the beginning, the professor said, have you ever thought about the question if life exists in other planets apart from the Earth? And he says, yeah, everybody has asked that question before, and there are some components that are necessary for planets to sustain life as the Earth. And he goes about talking about that particular topic, right? So what likely makes a planet able to sustain life, right? B, how life cannot exist without the water cycle. Of course, he mentions this, and he says, it's very important. It's actually the most important thing that water is present in any planet or war in which life could possibly be found. Nonetheless, he doesn't say that is, or excuse me, this topic is not the main idea of the entire lecture, but it's just one of the main ideas. But what is the lecture mainly about? The main idea of everything is the different components, right? Because the professor goes about discussing the different components that make a particular planet likely to host any type of life. And that is what the main idea of the passage is, because the entire time the professor comes back to the same idea. Well, we discussed this particular component, now let's discuss another one. And we finalize this one and we discuss another component or element that makes a planet habitable for, as I say, hosting life. Okay, let's go to the next question. Number 2, consider each of the choices separately. Okay, according to the professor, what problems would gas planets have in sustaining life? And here we had to choose C and also D. They lack a stable atmosphere to protect any planetary surface. Very good. And they're incapable of activity that transports nutrients. And you know why this is? It's because he said, right, water is the component or the element that transports nutrients. Therefore, when you have a very much gas planet, or very much gassy, let's say, of course, it is lacking and missing water. And therefore, it doesn't have any element that transports nutrients. So that's the reason why you can say they are incapable of activity that transports nutrients, right? B, they are generally too frigid, unpredictable, and full of ultraviolet rays. This is more for planets that do not have some sort of layer that protects, right, the planet from the sun. But this is not the case for gassy planets. Okay. 3, what does the professor imply about the cells of living organisms? That they may languish or die without certain resources. And this is because he said, right, during the lecture, that if they don't have nutrients, they're not gonna survive. And that's the reason why here it says they may languish or die without certain resources, right? They're intricate structures which require specific circumstances to be formed. Yeah, I mean, this is true, but nonetheless, it's not what the professor said, right? He never said that in this case, organisms are intricate structures, right? He never used that terminology. What he said was that they need nutrients to survive. And that's why, as I say, justifies this answer, right? That they may languish or die without certain resources. Question 4, according to the professor, what does liquid water signify about a planet? It is in a temperature zone possibly capable of sustaining life. Very good. This is exactly what the professor said, right? Number 5, how does the professor organize the information about a planet habitability? Sorry, I'm going to start the question again. How does the professor organize the information about a planet habitability that he presents to the class? And in this case, it was by taking one factor at a time and explaining each one. I think this one is very much apprehensible when you think about the entire lecture, right? Because he started with, okay, let's discuss this first component. And he talked about, for example, water, and then he talked about nutrients, and then he talked about ground, and then he talked about atmosphere, right? So there were different components. He was describing one by one, and of course, exemplifying and displaying how all these elements and components are important for a country to be likely capable of attaining life, right? So one by one, one factor at a time, right? This is the correct answer. And finally, Question 6. Let's listen once again.
To create a perfect storm.
The professor imply when he says this.
They combine to create a perfect storm, if you will, for conditions that are essential in fostering life.
Great. Several fine elements must come together for a habitable outcome. Okay. Yeah, this is true because he says, right, this, and this must come as in a storm, if you will, in order to be capable of presenting life. So what he's trying to say is several things must come together, must exist at the same time, and be persistent at the same time for the habitable outcome to exist, right? He never discusses intensity or the level, or let's say the power or strength in which all these elements must be present there to attain life, right? But it's more about the several fine things that need to be there just on its very, very necessary point, right? Very good. Anyways, great, dear students. I think that it was a very good practice for the listening section. Remember that I sent to you yesterday a bunch of materials to practice this by yourself. Let me open this quickly so we can look at this. Sorry, I don't know what is going on. Okay. Weird. Well, it doesn't work. Okay. Anyways, what I can tell you is I sent right yesterday a bunch of material for you to practice this. I sent 2 practices, and both of them are filled with different material. Use it to practice, okay, in your free time, because this is a very important part. And well, that's where we're going to finalize this class then. Let me please stop sharing. And as I told you, of course, this is also our last class, at least in this modality. As I told you, you have the chance to reserve yet your personal calls. I'm gonna resend the document to the WhatsApp group for you to see how to do this. And as I said, these personal calls are well, advantageous for you to practice the speaking section, right? Because that is what we're going to do, to practice the speaking section one-to-one. That is to say, just one of you with my person. And we're going to use a simulator to practice for the speaking section. Okay, so I'm going to resend the document to the WhatsApp group for you to see it. And of course, if you're interested, you can use that resource. As I say, it's included in your fee, so you can use it if you think it's a very good thing for you. Okay, so please, before you go, let me take your assistance. So here we have Elsa Maria.
Present.
And Claudia Hernandez.
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. So, well, thank you very much, guys, then, for your presence during these weeks. It's been a pleasure and incredible time with you. And if you have any question or doubt at some point during the TOEFL exam, please, you have my WhatsApp there. Send a message and get in touch with me, and I'm going to be delighted to help you. Okay, but thank you very much, and see you very much soon in the personal calls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
guys.
you, teacher. Bye.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Bye-bye, Elsa. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you very much.